Welcome to Bedtime Sports Stories, where every match becomes a tale worth remembering. If you enjoy stories like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's relive what many consider the greatest tennis match in history, the 2008 Wimbledon men's singles final between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal transcended sport itself, becoming a cultural moment that defined an era. This wasn't just a match, it was an epic battle between two titans, a clash of styles, personalities, and destinies that unfolded over 4 hours and 48 minutes on the hallowed grass courts of the All England Club. On July 6, 2008, the tennis world witnessed something truly extraordinary. As the British summer sky darkened and rain delays punctuated the drama, two of the greatest players ever to hold a racket pushed each other to absolute limits. The match would finish in near darkness at 9:16 p.m, with the outcome uncertain until the very last point. The build-up, a rivalry renewed. The 2008 Wimbledon Final was the third consecutive year that Federer and Nadal met in the championship match at the All England Club. This wasn't just another final. It was the latest chapter in the most compelling rivalry in tennis history. Roger Federer arrived at Wimbledon as the five-time defending champion, seeking his sixth consecutive title. The Swiss maestro had dominated grass-court tennis like few before him, winning an unprecedented 5 straight Wimbledon crowns from 2003 to 2007. He was attempting to equal Bjorn Borg's modern-era record of 5 consecutive Wimbledon titles, and was widely regarded as the greatest grass-court player of his generation. At 26 years old, Federer had already accumulated 12 Grand Slam titles and seemed destined to break Pete Sampras's record of 14 major championships. But standing across the net was Rafael Nadal, the Spanish warrior from Mallorca who had become Federer's greatest nemesis. Just 1 month earlier, Nadal had demolished Federer 6-1, 6-3, 6-0 in the French Open final, one of the most lopsided defeats in a Grand Slam final in modern tennis history. It was Nadal's 4th consecutive Roland Garros title, and he arrived at Wimbledon with unstoppable momentum and supreme confidence. Their previous Wimbledon finals had been dramatic affairs. In 2006, Federer won in 4 sets. In 2007, in what was considered an instant classic at the time, Federer prevailed in 5 thrilling sets, 7-6, 4-6, 7-6, 2-6, 6-2. Nadal was getting closer, learning the nuances of grass-court tennis, and many believed 2008 would be his year. The narrative was perfect. The elegant shotmaker against the brutal warrior, finesse versus power, precision against relentless intensity. Federer, with his flowing one-handed backhand and graceful movement, represented classical tennis at its finest. Nadal, with his muscular forehand and never-say-die attitude, embodied modern power and athleticism. The contrast in styles made their matches compelling theatre. The pre-match atmosphere. Wimbledon's centre court on that Sunday afternoon was electric with anticipation. The royal box was filled with celebrities, former champions and dignitaries. The crowd was a mix of Federer loyalists hoping to see history and Nadal supporters believing their man's time had finally come. The weather forecast was ominous. Dark clouds loomed over southwest London, threatening to disrupt what everyone hoped would be an epic encounter. The match was scheduled to begin at 2 p.m, but everyone knew that rain could play a decisive role in the outcome. Both players arrived on court looking focused and determined. Federer, in his traditional all-white outfit with cream cardigan, appeared calm and composed as always. Nadal, in his sleeveless shirt exposing his formidable biceps, looked like a gladiator ready for battle. The Spaniard's pre-match ritual was meticulous, arranging his water bottles with obsessive precision, picking at his shorts, touching his nose, pulling at his hair, a sequence that had become his trademark. First set, Federer draws, first blood. The match began at 2:06 p.m. with Federer serving. From the opening points, it was clear this would be no ordinary final. Both players were striking the ball with exceptional depth and pace, each probing for weaknesses that barely existed. Federer started brilliantly, playing near-perfect grass-court tennis. His serve was clicking, his volleys were crisp, and his ground strokes were finding the lines with laser precision. He held his opening service game comfortably and immediately put pressure on Nadal's serve. Nadal, who had worked tirelessly on his grass-court game, was serving bigger than in previous years. But Federer was reading his patterns, attacking the second serve and dictating play from the baseline. The Swiss broke in the fourth game when Nadal double-faulted at breakpoint, a rare error that gave Federer the early advantage. With the break secured, Federer raised his level even higher. He was serving and volleying with confidence, coming forward at every opportunity, refusing to let Nadal settle into comfortable baseline rallies. His slice backhand kept the ball low on the grass, preventing Nadal from generating his trademark topspin. Everything was working. Federer consolidated the break and continued to pressure Nadal's serve. In the eighth game, with Nadal serving at 3-4, Federer earned 3 break points. Nadal saved all 3 with gutsy first serves and courageous shot-making, showing the mental fortitude that defined his career. But Federer was not to be denied. He held for 5-3, and then served out the set with imperious authority. The first set lasted 50 minutes, with Federer winning 6-4. The champion was playing at his absolute peak, and many in the crowd wondered if Nadal could find a way back into the match. The statistics showed Federer's dominance. He won 73% of points on his first serve and converted his only breakpoint opportunity. It was clinical, efficient, and thoroughly professional. Second set. The tide turns. If the first set belonged to Federer, the second set would announce Nadal's arrival. The Spaniard came out with renewed aggression, standing further inside the baseline, taking the ball earlier and refusing to let Federer dictate. The change in tactics was immediate. Nadal began crushing his forehand with even more venom, sending heavy topspin balls deep into Federer's backhand corner. The Swiss was forced to defend more, and gradually Nadal began to control the baseline exchanges. In the third game, with Federer serving, Nadal sensed his opportunity. He attacked with ferocious intensity, and after a series of punishing rallies he earned a break point. Federer saved it with a big serve, but Nadal kept coming. Another break point arrived, and this time Nadal converted with a blistering forehand winner down the line. The break point had been seized, and suddenly the match felt different. Nadal consolidated the break with ease and continued to pile on the pressure. Federer tried to stem the tide, but Nadal was now playing with extraordinary confidence. In the seventh game, disaster struck for Federer. Serving at 2-4, he played a loose game and was broken again. Nadal was now serving for the set at 5-2, and the centre court crowd sensed a long afternoon ahead. But tennis is a game of momentum shifts, and Federer is not a 5-time champion for nothing. With Nadal serving for the set, Federer raised his game to another level. He returned aggressively, moved forward relentlessly, and put immense pressure on the Nadal serve. 3 break points appeared, and Federer converted the third with a stunning backhand pass. The breakback gave Federer hope at 3-5. Federer held for 4-5, forcing Nadal to serve for the set a second time. Could the Spaniard close it out? This time Nadal would not falter. He served and struck his ground strokes with authority, holding to love with an ace on set point. The second set was Nadal's 6-4 after 55 minutes of intense tennis. The match was level at 1 set apiece, and the quality of tennis was already exceptional. Both players were executing their game plans to perfection, and neither was giving an inch. The first rain delay. Just as the third set was about to begin, the heavens opened. Rain swept across centre court, and the covers were hastily brought out. The players left the court at 3:54 p.m. with the score level, leaving everyone to ponder what would happen when play resumed. The delay lasted 80 minutes, long enough for both players to cool down, refocus, and reconsider their strategies. Rain delays can change the momentum of a match, and both teams used the break to regroup. In the locker room, coaches and advisors whispered tactics and encouragement. When play resumed at 5:14 p.m, the atmosphere was even more charged. The crowd, having waited patiently, was ready to roar. The question was, who would benefit from the interruption? Third set, a tiebreak for the ages. The third set began tentatively, with both players feeling their way back into the match. The grass was slightly heavier after the rain, making movement more challenging and ball control more difficult. Both players held serve comfortably through the early games. Federer was serving brilliantly, winning 3 points with his first delivery and mixing in well-timed serve and volley attacks. Nadal matched him hold for hold, his improved serve on grass proving crucial. As the set progressed, the tension mounted. Every point became critical, every game a battle. Neither player could create a break-point opportunity. The serving was simply too strong, and the returning not quite penetrating enough. At 5-5, the crowd sensed a tiebreak approaching. Both players held serve, and at 6-all, the set would indeed be decided by a tiebreak. That most dramatic of tennis sequences where a single point can change everything. The tiebreak was extraordinary. Federer started well, winning the first 2 points to lead 2-0, but Nadal fought back immediately, his competitive spirit never stronger, and levelled at 2-2. The mini-breaks exchanged hands, neither player able to establish control. At 5-5 in the tiebreak, Federer earned a set point with a gorgeous backhand volley. The crowd gasped, thinking the champion would seize his advantage, but Nadal saved it with a courageous forehand winner up the line. The shot threaded through the narrowest of windows. The Spaniard then earned a set point of his own at 6-5, but Federer saved it with a serve and volley combination that drew applause from all corners of centre court. The tiebreak continued, both players refusing to yield. At 7-7, Nadal earned another set point with a stunning forehand pass. This time, he would not be denied. On the second set point, Nadal ripped a forehand winner that Federer could only watch. The tiebreak was Nadal's, 10-8, after a breathless sequence that lasted 12 minutes. The third set had gone to Nadal 7-6, and he now led 2-1. Federer's back was against the wall, but the champion had been here before. 5 times he had won the Wimbledon title, and his experience in these situations was unmatched. Fourth set. The champion. Responds champions are defined by their ability to respond when facing adversity, and Roger Federer demonstrated exactly why he was the greatest grass court player of his generation in the fourth set. From the first point, Federer played with renewed purpose and intensity. His movement was sharper, his shot selection bolder, his execution more precise. He was not going to let his Wimbledon reign end without the fight of his life. In the opening game, Federer immediately put pressure on the Nadal serve. After several punishing baseline exchanges, he earned 2 break points. Nadal saved the first with a big serve, but on the second, Federer unleashed a backhand return winner that drew gasps from the crowd. The break gave Federer the perfect start, and suddenly the momentum had shifted again. With the break secured, Federer played some of the finest tennis of his career. He was serving with pinpoint accuracy, mixing in slice backhands and topspin forehands, approaching the net with confidence, and executing volleys with the touch of an artist. Nadal had no answers. Federer consolidated the break, and then held comfortably for 3-love. The centre court crowd, sensing a 5th set, roared their approval. The champion was playing inspired tennis, and even Nadal's legendary defence couldn't prevent the onslaught. But Nadal is not a 4-time French Open champion by accident. He steadied himself, held serve, and tried to find a way back into the set. At 2-4, he had a chance, earning 2 break points on the Federer serve. The Swiss, however, refused to give back the break. He saved both points with clutch first serves and aggressive play at the net. Federer held for 5-2 and was now just 1 game away from forcing a 5th set. Nadal held serve to make it 5-3, but Federer was serving for the set with the momentum firmly on his side. Serving at 5-3, Federer was clinical. He fired an ace, hit a service winner, and executed a perfect serve and volley sequence. At 40-15, he had 2 set points. The first was saved by Nadal with a desperate forehand pass, but on the second, Federer struck an unreturnable serve down the tee. The 4th set was his, 6-4, and we were headed to a 5th and deciding set. The second rain delay. Just as the 5th set was about to begin, at 7:47 p.m, the rain returned. This time the delay was shorter, just 30 minutes. But it added another layer of drama to an already epic encounter. The light was fading, darkness was approaching, and everyone wondered if the match could be completed that evening. 5th set. Destiny awaits. When play resumed at 8:17 p.m, the light was dim and the tension unbearable. The Wimbledon Final, which had already produced 3 hours of extraordinary tennis, would now be decided in near darkness. Both players held serve in the opening games of the 5th set, but the increasing gloom made conditions difficult. Visibility was becoming a serious issue, and the chair umpire, Pascal Maria, was monitoring the light carefully. At 2-2, with Nadal serving, the match produced one of its most controversial moments. Federer earned a break point, a crucial opportunity to take control of the deciding set. On that break point, Nadal hit what appeared to be an out serve. Federer didn't play the ball, expecting the call. But the call never came. The linesman ruled the serve in, and Federer was stunned. He protested to the chair umpire, but the decision stood. Nadal went on to hold serve, and the break point opportunity was lost. The incident seemed to deflate Federer momentarily, while Nadal grew in confidence. In the next game, with Federer serving at 2-3, disaster struck for the champion. Nadal attacked with ferocious intensity, and after several grueling rallies, he earned 2 break points. On the second, Federer missed a backhand into the net. Nadal had the break and led 4-2 in the 5th set. The centre court crowd fell silent. Federer's 6-year reign at Wimbledon was slipping away. Nadal was just 2 games from his first Wimbledon title, and the Swiss champion needed a miracle. But champions never surrender, and Federer produced one final magnificent effort. With Nadal serving for 5-2, Federer threw everything at the Spaniard. He returned with aggression, charged the net relentlessly, and earned 2 break points. On the second, he hit a stunning backhand pass winner. The break was back. At 3-4, Federer still had hope. The Swiss held serve for 4-4, and suddenly, impossibly, the match was back on serve. The crowd erupted, willing their champion to complete the greatest of escapes. Could Federer force a tiebreak and take the match to a 6th hour? Nadal held firm for 5-4, and the pressure returned to Federer. Serving to stay in the championship, the Swiss responded magnificently. He held to love with an ace on game point. At 5-5, both men had held their nerve, and the match continued into the gathering darkness. At this point, the light was so poor that the white ball was difficult to see against the grey sky. The chair umpire consulted with tournament officials, but the decision was made to continue. Both players wanted to finish the match that evening. Neither wanted to return the next day with everything on the line. Nadal held for 6-5, and once again Federer was serving to stay in the championship. The Swiss held with authority, striking 2 aces and forcing another Nadal service game. At 6-6, many expected a tiebreak, but the Wimbledon men's final is decided by advantage sets. There would be no tiebreak in the 5th. Nadal held easily for 7-6, and Federer, now serving for the 22nd time in the match, prepared to serve again. The champion held to force Nadal to serve for the championship at 7-7. This was the moment of truth. Serving at 7-7 in the 5th set, with darkness descending on centre court, Rafael Nadal was 1 game away from his first Wimbledon title. Federer was 1 break away from extending the match further. The game began with Nadal missing a first serve. Federer pounced on the second, but Nadal's forehand won the point. At 15-0, Nadal hit a big first serve. At 30-0, another powerful delivery. The Spaniard was serving with conviction, refusing to show any nerves. At 40-15, Nadal had 2 championship points. The crowd held its breath. On the first, Federer returned deep, and after a short rally, Nadal missed a forehand wide. Championship point saved. At 40-30, Nadal served wide. Federer's return sailed long. Wait. Nadal checked with the umpire. The serve had clipped the net. It was a let. The championship point would be replayed. Nadal composed himself and served again. Federer returned, and the rally began. Forehand, backhand, both players striking with everything they had. Then Nadal saw his opening. He drove a forehand deep into the Federer backhand corner. The Swiss stretched, but could only float a defensive backhand back. Nadal pounced. hitting a forehand winner into the open court. The ball landed in. Rafael Nadal fell to his knees on the grass, arms raised to the darkening sky. After 4 hours and 48 minutes, the 2008 Wimbledon men's singles final was over. The final score 6-4, 6-4, 6-7, 6-7, 9-7. Rafael Nadal was the Wimbledon champion. The aftermath, as Nadal celebrated, Federer stood at the net, devastated. He had given everything, played brilliantly, and still lost. The images of Federer fighting back tears during the trophy presentation would become iconic. The greatest player of his generation, possibly ever, crying after losing the greatest match of all time. In his post-match speech, Federer was gracious and heartbroken. "It's not the end of the world. I enjoyed the match, but it's rough to lose." The emotion in his voice was evident. Nadal, in his moment of triumph, was respectful and humble. "Roger, sorry for today. I know you tried everything. You're still number one. The statistics from the match were remarkable." Nadal won 209 points to Federer's 204, a difference of just 5 points over 4 hours and 48 minutes. Federer hit more winners, 89 to 72, but Nadal committed fewer unforced errors, 52 to 63. Both players were nearly perfect on first serve, each winning over 70% of those points. The legacy. In the days, months, and years that followed, the 2008 Wimbledon Final has only grown in stature and significance. Tennis journalists, former players, and fans universally regard it as the greatest match ever played. The match had everything. 2 all-time greats at their absolute peak, contrasting styles, 5 sets, 2 rain delays, fading light, drama, controversy, brilliant shot-making, mental fortitude, and an outcome in doubt until the final point. It was a perfect storm of circumstances that produced perfect tennis. For Nadal, the victory completed his transformation from clay court specialist to complete player. He had proven he could defeat Federer on the Swiss champion's favourite surface. It gave him confidence that would carry him to further Wimbledon titles and ultimately to 22 Grand Slam championships. For Federer, the loss was devastating but ultimately made his legacy richer. His gracious defeat, his tears, his humility in losing the greatest match ever played. These moments humanized him and made fans love him even more. He would return to win Wimbledon again in 2009, 2012, and 2017, finishing his career with 8 Wimbledon titles and 20 Grand Slam championships. The match elevated their rivalry to mythical status. Federer and Nadal would play 40 times in total, with Nadal holding a 24-16 advantage. But no match, in any era, has captured the imagination quite like the 2008 Wimbledon Final. Tennis luminaries were unanimous in their praise. John McEnroe called it the greatest match I've ever seen. Bjorn Borg said, "It is the best match I have seen in my life." Pete Sampras declared it the greatest match ever. Their words carried weight. These were champions who had seen everything tennis had to offer, and yet this match stood above all others. Why? This match matters. The 2008 Wimbledon Final transcended tennis because it represented something universal. It was about 2 individuals at the absolute peak of their powers, pushing each other to levels neither could reach alone. It was about respect between fierce competitors, about grace in victory and dignity in defeat. In a sporting landscape often dominated by trash talk, controversy, and manufactured rivalries, Federer and Nadal showed that genuine mutual respect could coexist with burning competitive desire. Their friendship off court and ferocious competition on court provided a blueprint for how sports rivalry should be conducted. The match also reminded us that sport at its highest level is art. The shot making, the movement, the tactical adjustments, the mental resilience. These elements combine to create something beautiful. For 4 hours and 48 minutes on a cloudy Sunday in southwest London, two men played tennis as it was meant to be played. Conclusion. The 2008 Wimbledon Final between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal remains frozen in time as the greatest tennis match ever contested. Every element, the setting, the players, the quality of play, the drama, the emotional resonance, aligned perfectly to create a sporting moment that will be discussed and revered for generations. When tennis fans debate the greatest matches in history, when they introduce newcomers to the sport, when they want to explain why tennis matters, they inevitably return to July 6th, 2008. They return to centre court in the gathering darkness. They return to two champions giving everything they had. They return to the moment when Rafael Nadal fell to his knees and Roger Federer fought back tears. That match, more than any other, defines an era, celebrates a rivalry, and reminds us why sport matters. It was perfect in its imperfection, heartbreaking in its beauty, and unforgettable in every sense. The 2008 Wimbledon Final wasn't just the greatest tennis match ever played, it was one of the greatest sporting events in history, a testament to human excellence, resilience, and the pursuit of perfection. When the last ball was struck and Nadal collapsed in triumph, something had ended and something had begun. Federer's invincibility was shattered, but his legend grew. Nadal's moment had arrived, and his destiny was forever altered. Together they created something eternal, a match that will be watched, studied, and revered as long as tennis is played. That is the legacy of the 2008 Wimbledon Final. That is why it matters. That is why, nearly 2 decades later, it remains the standard by which all other matches are judged. It was quite simply perfect. The end. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story. Good night and see you next time.